in some of these pictures, I think I have the tank and we're looking at, or maybe spear guns or something, but he was one of my good friends and happened to live, and I wasn't aware of it at the time, but just across the river from me in Longview, Washington. He was in Oregon, and we were on a ship, and here we turned out to be the best friends. So he and I clicked, and I mean, there's a long story of what happened to him, that he was ended up being a police officer in Anaheim, California, and took a nosedive over the motorcycle one time, so he went on a medical, actually retired, and then he went to work for like a Wells Fargo, where the ATM machines, where he would go around and replenish the green stuff in them, and pick up this and that, and somewhere along the way he ended up missing. They couldn't find him, and they thought that his son may have had some problems with him. Turned out that they found his car burned. He was shot a few times, and they stole all of his property. Well, I happened to have been the best man in his wedding, after we both got out and so forth. So, you take those friendships and relationships, and Dan Leonard, who was on the ship, we weren't real close friends on the ship. He lived here in San Diego, and again, I was from Washington. And when I got married, my wife and I moved down here to San Diego, and we were in church one day, and sitting in a pew, and about 3 pews ahead of me, I saw this head back, the back of a head of some guy, and I knew immediately who it was after 3 years looking back of heads and standing in platoons at attention. You start to relate who they are. Well, this guy, we're godparents of one of his daughters, and vice versa, they're godparents of one of our sons, and so those little relationships there have grown, all of them, and I probably got sidetracked from your question, but
no, you're fine. This is what we're looking for.
Yeah.
But other than the bomb, what was the most intense moment for you on the Curtis?
Other than the bomb.
Was there anything that was more intense, or
the Russian submarine?
That there's so many of those things now that the submarine, when it was there, you didn't fully understand the impact of it, and even the bomb, you didn't really fully understand the impact of it. So, and I can't speak for others, but I think an awful lot of those situations, you heard about it, but at that time, no one heard that there were fingers on the buttons, ready to blow each other up. And, we've been told through very high-end sources that, that was almost the Third World War right there. They were that close of hitting the buttons, and we didn't know it. But I think it was Bob McKenzie that has met with a lot of the people in Washington, D.C., and had met maybe on a board with some Russian diplomat or person of knowledge, and somewhere along the way the Curtis came up, and the Russian diplomat said, "Did you ever know about the submarine that we were trailing you?" And Bob said, "Yeah." "Did you ever know we knew it?" And it was, both of them concluded, that was a very close circumstance, but it wasn't then to me. And now I look back and I can see it. I can relate to that. They're just really, I can't say there were any any real, at that point in time, there was nothing. It was kind of like another day in a big city. You know, you're back to work. You look now, and so many of the things that we did, and Bob Walsh that I mentioned earlier, Captain Brannaman, Ed Smith, and one other person, we can't really remember who, we took one of the detonators off the ship, and I thought we were delivering it to not Eniwetok, and I couldn't come up. I called it Japtan, and Captain Brannaman isn't quite sure remembering where we took it, but it was like four of us had our 45s, and or we had weapons, loaded weapons, a footlocker sized box that the four of us were carrying. Brannaman was up in front. He had his 45. We got off the LST, or a ship, a boat, better stated, at the end of a dock, and we walked down this dock probably 150 foot, and it was like MPs and whatever Navy down there, and the vivid thing in my mind, it was like pushing a boat through the water. It was like, you're not coming in here. And it's like they just opened the door and we just walked right through, and I thought, whoa, they know it's loaded or what? You know, the guns, rifles or, you know, pistols. And at that time, that was kind of a memory to me, only because, not that I knew why, but more importantly, it was kind of like, Swabbies, get out of our way, you know, kind of that attitude. So that's, you know, kind of one of the memories.
So could you tell me a little bit more about the bomb? If you actually had a chance to see it again, would you?
Would I want to?
Yes.
You know, I think the answer would probably be yes, to the extent it's like watching a good movie, and you say, oh, hey, I saw that movie, but it was good, and I'm going to watch it again. And when you watch it the second time, you look at different things. You watch it the third time, you look at something else. And I think if I had the opportunity to watch that bomb again, or any of those bombs, the thing that I think I would probably do would be when they said, you didn't have to tell us when it went off, and you knew it, and they said, you know, get up, turn around, and brace yourself or whatever. You watched the bomb, you watched this. I think what I would have liked to have done is taken about, you know, 5 or 10 steps forward, turn around and look at the people and look at their reactions, and really see, you know, what their attitudes were compared to mine. To me, it was, we were there, we were doing the thing, they knew the bomb was going to go off, everything we did was routine, okay, blah, blah, blah. Well, it wasn't routine, 100 times greater than they anticipated with this one bomb. So, you know, to look at it, it was beautiful. You know, it was truly a beautiful sight, you know, in terms of the mushroom and the light and the clouds and all of that. But it was, you know, you didn't realize, didn't realize what the strength, the impact, you know, what could have happened, what could come out of that. So, yeah, I would like to see him again, but looking at a whole different aspect of it. And that's true of the one in, the two that I'd like to see would be the thermonuclear one, the big one, and then the one here off the coast of California. That would have, those two, again, were distinct difference from each other, but I'd look at a whole different aspect of it.
Well, then we can definitely ask this question. If you could relive your experience well, really military experience, but mainly the experience in Curtis again, what would you possibly do different?
The military experience on the ship,
Or just call it military experience?
total military
Total.
experience, I would have stayed in. I would have stayed in. When I, for a lot of reasons, but let me go the other way. When I was ready to get out, and as true with probably all military people, they want you to re-enlist. And when I was offered to or wanted to be re-enlist, they offered me a position of being a diplomat courier or some connection into FBI, CIA some way, and I don't, know the how, because you're still military, but you're working with them some way or another. At the time, I was 21, and I thought 21 plus another 20, let's see, that would be 23 years in the service, so let's see, 21 and 20, that's, my God, I'm old. No way am I going to do this. I can always come back, but boy, once I sign up, I can't get out. That was then. Now, I look at it, and I have an older brother, had an older brother that's passed away, that he joined the Army at 15 and stayed in for 21, 22 years. And I look at his career after he got out, being this old man I was referring to, and it was like, probably did better than mine, So I look back from that aspect of it and say I would have done it, and I think what I probably would have wanted to do if I were to stay in, and two mistakes I maybe made. One is I did not. You're automatically having to be in the reserves for a period of time. I think it was 2 years, maybe 3 years after you get out. You're on call for the reserves. You don't have to actively be involved in it. Number one, I think in hindsight, if I did get out and decide to stay out, I would have stayed joined the reserves. But on the other hand, if I had stayed in or rejoined, I think I would have definitely tried to get into the officer academy some way or another, because I think it's just one heck of a good career, military, be it Marine Corps or any of the others, for a lot of good reasons.
So Curtis-wise, would you have changed anything if you had to relive it, go through it?
No, I can't really say I would change any of it. It was a very good experience. You became, like our group. Nominally, there were 2 platoons at each. When we went on, 2 platoons went on, and one, few left, and always 2 platoons, if you will. And you became friends with a group. If there's 60 of you there, like anything, like going to high school or whatever, your neighborhood, you've got 3 or 4 special friends. They're all good friends, but special friends. And the same with the sailors, you end up becoming friends with a handful of Navy guys. And I think it would be, if I were to do it again, I think I would have expanded that relationship, because it's just a whole bunch of guys that you didn't have the opportunity to really enjoy. And you get out and you meet them, and meet them really in a sense of now knowing you. It's, man, I wish I'd clicked with you a little earlier. So as far as my duties, I think the friendship and relationships I would have liked to have enlarged on, but would have I rather had different duties or whatever. No, I would like to, and again, hindsight, and we couldn't have done it even if we had wanted to, but it would have been good if we knew more of what you were doing and I'm doing and whatever. In other words, a clearer picture. But on the other hand, I can see the advantage from a security viewpoint, from a whole bunch of viewpoints of not letting every person know what the other person's doing. So it's, and the answer is no, I wouldn't really change a whole bunch. It was a very enjoyable career.
So, did you have to, I mean, a lot of Curtis people have had issues with sickness. Did you have to deal with any kind of sickness? Or?
Unfortunately or fortunately, and the answer is no, I do not have any health problems whatsoever to my knowledge. And I've asked myself that many a time, and we've discussed it between, when the Curtis group first got together as a reunion, there were about 5 or 6 of us that really pulled it together, and we were talking, I was calling over the United States. If I was looking for you in my albums, you'll find a lot of rosters, and when I left the ship or was about ready to get off, I took the roster and went down the names with almost everyone and said, what's your home address, what's your phone number, and I put them all on there. So when I started pulling this reunion thing together after 45 years of not seeing guys, I'd be calling people maybe 150 calls to find someone. And you got to ask me the question again. I got sidetracked there, but
it was just the sickness part.
Okay. So as we were talking to people, and still talk to people, and you be one that may have 5 or 6 different major health problems, and it was like, well, what did you do that I didn't do? And what I've concluded in 99% of the cases, I stood right by that locker, and you stood by a locker there, and the radiation was pouring out. I was on the deck when the bomb went off. You were there on the deck when the bomb went off. And this person has major health problems, and I have none. And there are several of us that have, fortunately, we have no health problems at this point in time. So I do have a son, my youngest son, has an 85% hearing loss. But is that to do with any of the, thermonuclear radiation, whatever? Who's to say, my wife's doctor at the time, when he was born, attributed it to a minor touch of German measles. Was it or wasn't it? We don't know, and that's the battle we've been battling, is trying to get a handle on and trying to get some benefits, but more importantly, trying to really see if any of these causes or any of these health problems are direct causes of the radiations and what have you. So, but no, I've been very fortunate. God bless.
All right. So, last question: what was the highlight of this reunion?
Of this reunion?
Yeah, to you.
Well, everyone I've noticed, we have name tags, and if you start with the first reunion, and we had it here in San Diego, and I recall walking in again with all my albums and walking into the lobby, and there were about 10 or 12, 14 people standing there. I looked at them, I knew they were all Marines, all part of the Curtis group, only because they were there, And I looked at him, and it's like, I wonder who he is. I wonder, whatever. And you might recognize one out of, the bunch. But what I found that day was if you said 3 or 4 sentences and maybe you walk from here to the wall and back, I would recognize maybe 75% of them just by, their reactions, their method of speaking or walking or whatever the case be. That was then. Now, I don't need name tags. I know everyone, I know their wives, whatever. So the highlight of all the reunions is this the closeness of the growth of what we are getting into, where before, as I said earlier, you were good friends with 4 or 5 specific guys, because one was, lived across the river from me, as I mentioned, and so therefore that kind of drew you together. Well, what is happening now is we're all close. And so the highlight of all of these reunions is, you sit down and it's BS time, with everyone. And you don't even have to start the BS. I can tell you what not mentioning names, but I can tell you what's going to come out of his mouth and what's going to come out of his, and I know where the, the highs and the lows and the whatever, which we all do, and it's one big, very happy, close family. That's all I can say.
Alrighty. Well, that concludes the interview here.
In about 30 seconds, can you describe the emotion and psychological situation that you were in when you saw Bravo shot?
Well, I would say that it was like, oh my God, it was probably the one thing that really awakened me to what the heck was, I won't say what was happening, but the distinct bam difference. It wasn't the boom, it wasn't the mushroom. What it was is you sat there with your back to it, your head down, your goggles on, your eyes closed, your head in your arms, and it's just black, 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 and in a split second it is just overly bright, and I'm sure you've been told a zillion times about seeing the bones in your arms, and that was probably the most emotional thing of all of it, was that split second change. And then you turn around, and as I say, the rest of it was not, it was beautiful. As I say, that mushroom and everything was just, spectacular, and it was something that I'm glad I was able to see. Even if we had, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but when the bomb went off and you see this water coming toward you, black over here and beautiful blue right here, and then all of a sudden, it hits, the ship jumps out of.
Okay, if you wouldn't mind starting out with just your name and when you joined the Marines and why you joined the Marines.
My name is Paul Morgeau. I am a junior. I joined the Marines back in January of 1953. Now the story behind that is I went to the Navy recruiter to join there first because my dad, my uncle were Navy. And I didn't know much about the military at all. But then they were filled up, so I went to the Marine recruiter, and there was an opening in the Marine wing there, flying. So I went there. I signed up in January of '53. And 4 months later, I got my letter of induction into the Army, and I had to go take a physical, so I opted to stay in the Marine Corps, and I went into the Marine Corps. So that's how I got into the Marine Corps.
And then the Curtis.
The Curtis was another thing. I went through boot camp in San Diego with many of the people that Marines that are aboard that. Then afterwards, I went, and when I left boot camp, I was given orders to Sea School, which is for Sea Marines. And In the interim, I went up to Camp Pendleton for advanced military training, advanced infantry training. And then when I was through with that, I came down and commenced C School. C School was really a place where you did a lot of ironing of clothes and everything else, shining shoes, and it was to prepare you to go aboard ship, to become security guards, become whatever, ceremonies, whatever. And so you had to really be squared away. And we were all handpicked to go on there too. So when it was time, when I graduated, I had orders to Japan to be an admiral's orderly. Well, as I was taking all of those ironed shorts and shirts and all that out of my footlocker and my locker and stuffing them into my sea bag, thinking I'm not going to be doing a lot of ironing or pressing for a while, one of the sergeants that was assigned to the Curtis, along with a lot of friends I went to school there with, said, "Morgeau, you're not going anywhere. You're coming aboard the Curtis." So I went aboard the Curtis. That was not my choice.
What was your first impression of the Curtis?
Well, I didn't know much about it. The Curtis was a very secret ship. We were asked to, I don't remember if we were asked to provide information for the FBI to investigate us, but they did a very thorough search on us, or investigation, prior to us going aboard ship. But, I mean, I went aboard the ship and I looked around and I wasn't really even impressed with the ship. Here was a ship that had been in Hawaii and took a kamikaze ship down the smokestack, I understand. It really had no significance other than picking up a seaplane out of the water, put it on deck and repair it and put it back in the water again. But it wasn't a very impressive ship at all.
Describe it to me a little bit, actually. Now I'm kind of curious.
Mm-hmm. A little bit about what?
Describe the ship.
Like, why was it impressive?
Well, because here it was a seaplane tender. And why do Marines go aboard seaplane tenders? We didn't go through all of that sea school to shine and press our clothes, spit shine our shoes, shine our bills on it. We usually have about 4 or 5 pairs of shoes, and it would take you a good 10 hours or better to shine a pair of shoes. And I thought, well, what the world are we doing? So that was it. I didn't know. That was a strange ship for a Marine ground. We generally went aboard aircraft carriers, and we generally went aboard cruisers, but we didn't go aboard seaplane tenders. And of course, we didn't know what we were going to do, so we were all puzzled to begin with.
Describe the ship as best you can to me. Like, what did it look like?
Well, the ship was, it looked like most other ships, from the forward part of the ship to almost the aft end, the back of the ship. It was cut off from about 3 decks up and was squared off, and there were big doors where they could bring a plane in there and work on it, just like a hangar. And then the back part was flat, and there was a big crane on the back, which generally picked up the plane, put it on the flat deck, and then it was pushed into the hangar.
Any particular area of the ship that you thought was at least kind of interesting?
No, there wasn't. It was a strange ship, and I went aboard it because I had to.
That's perfect. that's gonna be great. We're gonna use that.
Yeah.
All right. So, what was life like on the Curtis? And by that I mean, who were your friends? What did you guys do for fun? That sort of thing.
Well, I don't remember who all my friends were. We just kind of went. I had a car there, so I had a lot of friends. If I didn't go on Liberty, someone would borrow my car and take off. And then one time when we left San Diego and went up to San Francisco to have a flight deck put on the front for helicopters, one of my shipmates, a Marine, had his family here and asked if he could drive my car up there. And I said, sure. That way I'll have transportation there, and so will everyone else. So we took it up. He took it up to San Francisco, and then I was able to take it out on Liberty and have a lot of good fun. And most of the excuse me, most of the individuals that were my friends were the lower ranks, because I was a private first class at the time. And Bobby Borman and John just left here. John was a good friend. Charlie Provo was a nice friend. He's a psychologist now in Chicago. And Gene Pratt is kind of like a farmer back in Iowa. And another gentleman, Gene Whitford, was a friend of mine prior to going aboard, and then he served with me later on when I went back into the Marine Corps after going through college. But generally the lower enlisted guys, we would go out and drink. We'd go out and have a good time. We'd go swimming. We'd go to the beach, whatever. Go to the bars, try to pick up girls, let them pick us up. Once in a while we might go down to Tijuana and look around, Good old Marine, young Marine stuff.
Makes me want to be a Marine, actually.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of fun.
Was there one moment on the Curtis that you'll never forget? That one memory that you tell to your grandkids or your kids? Well, I imagine you've never told any of these to your kids because you can't. But now looking back, one thing that you guys did.
I think the one thing that I'll really think about is when we were anchored in the Bikini Atoll. We were allowed to go on Liberty, and a boat would take us over and drop us off. And we, of course, had a lot to drink there, but what we would do is we'd break open a coconut and put all kinds of booze in there and call it a Bikini Special. And boy, I'll tell you, one of those and you were laying flat on the sand. We really enjoyed ourselves when we went on the beach. And there were sand crabs too, Those little things would get on your body and you'd have to go in and spray them off and everything else. Usually you think of sand crabs or crabs when you go into an unknown bathroom and you sit where someone else has and they make a deposit there and they're on you. Well, no, these are little sand crabs that crawl on the sand, they get on your body. And I was laying up on the deck one night trying to sleep, and gee whiz, So I had the next day get a damn spray can and spray those suckers off there. Yeah.
I heard that you cut those little coconuts open, and sometimes they actually come out.
Yeah. Well, we'd take off, we'd husk them and everything else, and then cut the top off, and then we'd have the coconut juice mixed in with our alcohol. And those were our drinks, a Bikini Special, and that was our rum and whatever we had there. We put it together. We were having fun.
That's going to have to go in this. I'd love to recreate that. That would be funny. So, tell me a little about this. This is kind of way off subject, but and I'm just curious. What is that deal? What is this UFO that they're talking about?
Well, I don't know. I never saw a UFO, and I don't pretend to know anything about it. But I was speaking to one of my good friends, Dave Matzler, who I see all the time now, and he's one of the ones that I primarily email to. He was an admiral's orderly, and of course, when you're with the admiral and their high-ranking officers, you hear a lot of things that most of us that were down below didn't, because we didn't have the need to know. They had the need to know, so and they were their orderlies, so they were right there with them when they were talking, things like that. And he tells me that he saw something, a light, go past the ship one night. I think as we were anchored probably somewhere, and that's all I know of it.
Okay, all right. What were some of the ramifications of telling people what you were doing?
Well, we couldn't tell anyone anything because, of course, if you told anyone that what you were doing and you were not supposed to, you could be court-martialed. You could be thrown in jail. You could be booted out of the Marine Corps. Those are the ramifications.
What was the most difficult part of it? I'm sure that there was times where you wanted to tell your wife, or even your parents or anybody, but you couldn't. I mean, what, in your opinion, was the most difficult part about not being able to
Well,
tell
we
these
were
things?
good Marines. We were told that we could not tell them, and we didn't. So all of the talking that we did was between each other, between our friends. So we reinforced each other by talking with, with your friends aboard ship. And no, you didn't think about telling anyone else. You didn't write anything in letters. You were told this was a very secret operation, and it's not to be made known to the public, so keep it to yourself, keep it to your friends, keep it on the ship, and good Marines do that.
Later on, though, your children, do your children have any problems later on as a result of?
Yeah, my daughter and her son have ADD, which is one of the symptoms from overexposure to radiation. I have, no, that's about the only thing that I can recall. And there's not many things wrong with me. I have had little spots on my face and in my ear and on my back that were thought to be cancerous, and they took it out and they were fine. So.
Okay. So, the bomb, and if you wouldn't mind walking me through the day that this thing went off, because you knew that you were going to blow up, and by the bomb I'm talking about Bravo shot. If you wouldn't mind walking me through the day, from the moment that you woke up to the moment that you went out on deck, and the 3, 2, 1, the whole thing, your emotions, everything that happened.
Well, on the day that Bravo went off, I was with a detail that was sent down to Eniwetok from the Bikini Atoll, which was going to be ground zero. We were down there to pick up the next one. And of course, we loaded that aboard an LST, which is one of those that open in the front and the ramp comes down. And when it goes on the water, it goes just like that. But anyway, we were down there for that one. So we waited, and we got to drink a lot of beer while we were there, and we got to be around the Hawaiians and all that, and all the workers, and we got to go over and eat the good meal of this Holmes and McCarver Builders, rather than ship's food. But once one person says the ship's food's not good, then every enlisted has got to say it's not good, for the same reason. But it's good food. There's a lot of food there. There's all kinds of things to eat. But we were sent down there, and we had to stay a couple extra days because the weather at impact there, or at the ground zero, was not good, and it was not favorable of a detonation. So what we did was we waited a couple days, and then on the morning of the shot, we were getting ready to go aboard the LST, and it was as black as night. I mean, you couldn't see a thing. And all of a sudden, that flash went off. We were over 200 miles from ground zero. And where I was, it was daylight. It was like these lights on here. It was like high noon. And then, shortly after the light subsided, then the mushroom went up. And that was Bravo. Okay, and we, of course, I think picked up Romeo, or another one that was almost as big as Bravo. Bravo was scheduled to be, they thought it was going to be a 6 megaton, and it turned out to be a 15 megaton. And that's a lot of difference. But that's where I was. I saw that thing go off. I was with 4 other Marines, and we were just unbelievable. Could not believe it. How could anything be so big, so powerful? And that probably kept us from going into World War III, too, when the Russians heard about it and saw it.
That was going to be my next question, actually.
Yeah, because every once in a while you could detect that there were subs in the area, and you knew they were Russians.
Tell me about that moment that the sub was, that particular, the one moment that everybody talks about the submarine telling you guys in the Bikini Atoll.
Well, we got a little concerned aboard ship because we didn't know why the submarine was. Well, we knew that the submarine was there probably to witness the detonation, but we didn't know what else they were there for. As far as we know, it could have been sent a torpedo at us and sunk us or whatever and kept us from doing more. But we just heard about it. It was kind of grapevine. Those guys that stood watch up on the bridge, those are the guys that were kind of privy from the admirals and the captain of what was going on, and of course we'd all talk about it.
At that time, were you kind of freaked out about it, or was it just?
No, I wasn't freaked out about it. We had several destroyers that formed a perimeter around us, and that was the duty of a destroyer. If a torpedo comes towards a ship, then the destroyers are supposed to come up and take the impact of it. And of course, we had the admiral and his staff aboard, so the admiral's not going to go down. Those destroyers will go down first. Rank has its privileges.
So, I lost my train of thought here. The bomb. Trying to describe the magnitude of this, the size of it, and the something so big and so powerful to somebody that knows nothing about nuclear bombs other than what he's seen in the movies. What was it like?
Well, I'll tell you what. We would sit on the aft end of the ship, on the flat area, whenever a bomb was detonated. And some of the sergeants would get glasses, and so would the ship's staff. But us lower-ranking individuals, we didn't get glasses. So it was our job then to bury our arms, turn away and bury our head into our arms and all that. And when that initial flash went off, if you looked at it, you could have lost your sight. When that went off, we saw right through our bodies like an X-ray. Unbelievable. And a couple guys even told me that when they were down inside of the ship, inside of the skin of the ship, and the ships are usually, got quite a bit of skin on the side. They're pretty thick. They said they saw the flash too. Now that's what they tell me. I was never below at that particular time. But this thing would go off. It was so bright. And then it just came up and it was just a big ball of fire. And then all of a sudden it would go totally up in the air and it would spread out. And one of the orderlies told me that the admiral saw that. He said, "My God, we got to get out of here." So then the ship, in about 20 to 24 miles, which is close, damn close to anything like that, it pulls our ship out and we ditty out of there, get the hell out of there. And then the ship has a sprinkler system on it. So we head into the wind, you turn off all the air conditioning to all the troops below. And we've got to remain like that until they get out there with the Geiger counters sporadically to check and see what how much radiation we have on the ship. Now, if they go up there and there's still signs of it, they come down. We still keep the fans, the air conditioning off, and then they'll go back up again in their suits and everything else, and they'll test it again. But that could go on for a couple hours or better before they got the total ship clear of any radiation.
If you had the chance, would you go back in time and watch it again?
Certainly, because this time I can expect what's going on. I know what's going on. And of course we couldn't go out. And I think McKinsey one time told me that if people tried to get out for one reason or another, started to panic, then our orders as Marine Centers to shoot them. I don't,
I've heard some of the other guys talk about when the bomb went off, the feeling was of panic and, oh my God, they miscalculated, we're going to die, or this is just business as usual. And it's been just a wide range of reactions to when it went off. But the psychological emotions that they were feeling at the time, what was yours?
Oh, I imagine we all got up and just stood there and said, "My God, what the hell was that?" And then the sonic boom comes, hits the ship, and it's so damn loud and all that. And here, then the water even rolls up towards you, and you got to get out of there. I don't know how big those waves would have got, but it doesn't take it very long from a blast that size to get your ship, especially when we're 24 miles away. That's probably, I think we were the closest ship every time, because the Admiral was aboard our ship.
Wow. Alrighty.
Yeah, death was death was a thought.
So you believe there was a little voice in the back of your head that said, "Oh my God, they miscalculated."
Oh yeah. Oh my God, we're dead. I didn't know they miscalculated. I didn't have any idea it was supposed to be a 6 megaton and turned out to be a 15. I wasn't privy to all that information. All I knew was this was a big son of a gun. And it was I think one of the first ones we ever detonated that I saw. So, you know, the initial shock was something else. After that, then we knew what to expect. And I think
So, okay. We're almost finished here. What was the highlight of this reunion? I have to go off topic for a minute.
the friends I met, because we were all very, very compatible. We all had things in common. We probably all came from kind of the same background. Although I was almost half Indian. I was born on the reservation in Montana. I lived in some filthy areas and all that. But comradeship, absolutely.
If you're
Today, we still meet, as you know. We love each other. We help each other. We're there.
to somebody who's not a Marine, if you're going to tell me what's the number one reason to become a Marine, and describe that brotherhood just a little bit more.
Well, ask a sailor, or ask a soldier. They say, well, my God, every time you Marines get together, you start having fun. You have reunions. You forget about it. You go back to things like that. We say baloney. We were aboard ship for 2.5 years together in a compartment that most of us slept in, bunks 3 high. And that's tight. And you got a little small drawer underneath to put some of your gear. The rest of it you got to store it. This was a small area. You had to get along. You helped clean up the space. You helped make everyone's rack. You helped the other guy. If they couldn't go to watch, you'd go take care of their watch for them. But we were so close knit because we were just in an area by itself, and the things we went through, the ability to go ashore and have a good time on the beach, even though there wasn't anything higher than 7 feet above sea level, we had a good time.
I imagine that right now, and this is, I think this is what also compels me to the story is, it's been so long since you guys, or it's been so long you guys have spent your lives in secrecy that you haven't been able to say something, and now when it finally comes your time, everybody is kind of so old, and of course the effects of radiation have really taken its toll on you guys as far as life expectancy.
That's right.
And so, how do you feel about when you come back to these things and you realize that some of these guys that you spent so much time with and you got so close with are gone?
Right. Well, I feel abandoned by our country sometimes because we couldn't say anything for about 12 years after the detonation. Then they start opening this up and made it available for the public. But all the people that were there, the Atomic Energy Commission people, all the bigwigs, the admirals, everyone else, most of those people are gone. Most of those people don't work for these organizations anymore. So we that were there have to go to the institutions like the Veterans Hospital and things like that. We have to fight our own battles because everybody that works there knew nothing of what we were doing. So we've got to, en masse, get together, go to our veterans hospitals, let them know the stories, give them the information and all that. No one else is there to even provide anything for us.
It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. I really do, honestly, genuinely feel for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
But